morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. Yes, I'm actually off to Morocco this week. You're all welcome to join me. I decided to go on a 4-day retreat, which focuses on mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual advancement. So I'm doing something for myself. It's important to take care of ourselves. I'm here to talk about crypto regulation, and I'm a massive believer that some people, they like to hear things and some people like to see things. So for people that like to see, I've put in a Telegram some diagrams that you might want to reference during the presentation I'm going to give. I thought I was going to give a presentation. I prepared slides, but there's no backdrop, so I'm here free balling it, so to speak. It's exactly, and you know, we started off today and you actually said it really well, let there be change. And we are existing in an infrastructure, especially for crypto regulation, that's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. And that basically is my job day to day, is to understand how things are moving, how things are changing, and what we need to do. So as mentioned, I work at Oongh, I'm the Chief Platform Officer, and my job is to examine regulations around the world. How do we expand our footprint through being regulated? And if we're not being regulated, how do we expand through fiat and crypto rails through connectivity partners? Challenge statement. Crypto is not regulated globally. There's kind of 3 thoughts on it, so to speak, globally. 1, it's regulated. 2, it's not regulated. It's not necessarily being announced as legal or not illegal. People are allowed to participate. Vietnam is a great example of this. And I suppose the last point is, it is verboten. It is illegal. And so we constantly grasp the fact that regulations change, and they change week in, week out in this space. First example, I suppose, is the US. The US is probably one of the easiest ones to look at. In the US, crypto is regulated by state. So there's not a federal regulation, it's statewide. So what we have to do, for example, at Oongh, we have to be regulated by state, which means we have to go through the licensing process. And every state has its own particular aspects that we need to comply with. That is very challenging. It's incredibly challenging. Luckily in Oongh, we've achieved that. We're very, very proud of that. But then you move over into Europe. Europe, again, there's a wide spectrum in terms of regulatory oversight. So the UK is a great example. We just successfully obtained our UK FCA crypto registration. It is not under the banking license a banking license, so to speak, in terms of getting a banking license. It is a registration. Why is it a registration? Because the regulator hasn't decided what they want to do in this space yet. So to protect themselves, they got various market participants to apply for registration. That's great. 25 firms, including Oongh, I'm very proud to say, were successful. It was very difficult. It was incredibly difficult. It took us approximately 12 months to get that registration. Floorboards were lifted, the FCA examined everything. We're very happy to say that they achieved it, but then other people haven't. Other competitors haven't achieved it, and there's various reasons for that. And I'm not maybe because we're being recorded, I won't go into the reasons why, but if anybody's any questions, let me know. And this is not being talked disparagingly about competitors, etc. It's a very difficult space. One very public one was Binance. Binance was actually rejected in the UK because of failure to disclose beneficial ownership. It wasn't about issues in terms of due diligence, regulatory compliance, it was failure to disclose beneficial ownership, which the FCA publicly announced. And other firms, they've not been as successful because being compliant in the UK is incredibly difficult. It is not just about a regulatory tick box. We have this policy, we have that policy. You need to live and breathe the regulatory framework. You need to do due diligence for your customers. You need to implement operational effectiveness for that to be effective. You then need to do transaction monitoring. And transaction monitoring, I'm going to be honest, is probably one of the worst things we do as an industry. I've been in the industry over 20 years now. I've worked in multiple organizations, ING, HSBC, Citibank, where I was APAC head for AML compliance. I have led organizations through deferred prosecutions with the US government as well. It is not about implementing a system, it is about being operationally effective, and transaction monitoring is something as an industry we do terribly. Our systems are about 2% accurate, well between 2 to 8%, but it's a multi-million dollar industry because people have to buy these systems. So we at Oongh have been looking at ways we can do this differently, and we've actually started to build our own systems as well to support our regulatory compliance. Across Europe, I've mentioned the UK, Europe at the moment does not have a standardized regulation in respect of crypto assets. In 2025, we will see MiCA introduced, which is the market and crypto asset regulation. However, until that happens, each country has its own process for regulatory compliance. The Netherlands, Germany, France. And one of the very interesting approaches is Germany. Many countries have standalone registration for crypto. In Germany, it is a banking license. So if you look at just a traditional bank, it's the same applies for crypto firms in Germany. You have to obtain a banking license, which many people may be familiar with. Getting a banking license is very different than getting registered for a product or a service. So we do find a lot of firms are kind of stepping out of Germany because of the regulatory requirements. It's very strenuous, very difficult. And even if you go through a connectivity partner, i.e. you don't obtain your own licensing, you still need to be regulated. So the good thing is, with MiCA coming in 2025, if you have licensing in another European country, you will be able to passport that, all being well, into Germany. One of the other things that we've heard as well, and we spoke to a few lawyers, is be careful about being registered in multiple countries in Europe, because once MiCA comes in, that can cause difficulty in terms of reporting requirements. So we're looking at this very carefully at the moment to understand and position ourselves, not just about today, but also about tomorrow. Where do we see ourselves in 2022 versus 2025 when MiCA comes into force? Taking ourselves then over to the Middle East. In the Middle East, the legislation coming through is phenomenal. And I have to say, personally, I believe the UAE and Bahrain is two of the best examples of crypto regulation. What they have done incredibly well is they've broken the products, the crypto assets, into different types of risks. And this is something we haven't seen in other jurisdictions. Other regulators really struggle to understand what is crypto. And what they haven't done is they haven't begun to break down products. If you look at traditional banking, a spot FX versus a derivative product, there's very different risks involved. And the same applies in crypto assets. It's not an umbrella. There are specific risks that we need to address. So interestingly, last week, and maybe don't want to say too much about this, there was a sprint with the SCA in the UK looking at future regulation. And that was one of the key things they've been looking at the UAE and Bahrain as an example for, to begin to segregate different types of risks within crypto products within the regulatory framework. So that's been incredibly interesting. Going then over into APAC, where I have been based in Hong Kong and Singapore for the past 12 years, so I've been part of this from the very inception. The sandboxes back in 2013 really is when this started to evolve. It's been amazing. Singapore, we have the Payment Services Act, and we've seen other countries. Japan is leading the way globally in terms of crypto regulation. They've done a phenomenal job, probably one of the best globally. But we've seen other countries coming up not far behind that. Interestingly, I put in the Telegram chat, I don't know if you can all see it, and there was a chain analysis report earlier this year in terms of the take-up of ordinary people in crypto. And the #1 country in the world is Vietnam, followed by India and Pakistan. In the top 20, there's actually not one European country. You see Russia, you see Ukraine there, but there's no other European countries. Rather, it is developing countries. We're seeing Togo, we're seeing Venezuela, we're seeing Afghanistan. That is the top 20. So it's an incredibly interesting list, but that doesn't translate to how the regulation is evolving in those countries either. Vietnam is a very interesting example. It's #1 on the take-up list, but in terms of regulation, the government has closed down crypto firms within the country, but it hasn't taken the stance to say that crypto is illegal. So it's a very, very interesting dynamic that's happening there. I'm thinking about other countries. Philippines is doing amazingly well at the moment. I'm really, really excited. I genuinely personally believe Philippines is going to be a phenomenal market for crypto moving forward. Thailand is one of my favorite locations. Again, I see a lot of firms, a lot of the crypto firms as well, looking at Thailand for back office as well, which is a big change. In traditional banking, we saw India being used primarily, and Malaysia most recently for offshoring. Thailand seems to be the choice for crypto asset back office operations, which is really interesting. That being said, the engineers, who are the life and blood of the crypto firms, personally I believe they're in Braga and Porto, But again, you need to be located somewhere with a great university that's investing in engineers. I'm now wondering, Africa. Africa, I really genuinely believe is going to be phenomenal. Ghana and Nigeria are two of the fastest, and Togo, three of the fastest growing locations for crypto uptake. But the regulatory frameworks are not as advanced. So, we saw Nigeria implement a new AML, anti-money laundering legislation, just 2 years ago. That's still in the process of being adopted in the industry. To now ask for crypto regulation to be implemented in this area, that's a big step. It's a big ask, but it's going to be a phenomenal market. And we're seeing a lot of development happening in that space as well. And then last but not least, moving over to LATAM. Mexico, surprisingly, is one of the most difficult and challenging locations globally to get crypto regulated. We're seeing a lot of stablecoin usage as well in terms of pegged versus backed. Generally, if a stablecoin is backed, it needs to be regulated. If it is pegged to the local currency, there are some moving around that. I don't know how long that kind of gap in the legislation will continue to exist, but it is a good workaround at this moment in time for some connectivity. But Mexico is the one country, and again, El Salvador, as we saw, was one of the first countries to legally adopt, actually to pay your tax bill with Bitcoin. So LATAM is making fantastic advancements. So from a regulatory perspective, things are constantly evolving. Let there be change. There's change happening day in, day out. And at Uphold, one of our biggest challenges is just understanding the timelines in terms of legislation and adoption. So take Singapore, for example. If you were to go to Singapore today and say, I want to be licensed, to get an application in with the regulator, you're talking a 9 to 12 month process to be approved. Then you need to open an operating account. Opening an operating bank account to activate your license actually can take in itself 6 to 9 months. So you really are looking at approximately an 18-month to 2-year window in order to get licensed and regulated in some of these locations. So do factor that into your development plans. Do factor that into your due diligence. When you're looking at investment in crypto firms, understand how they're going to evolve over the next 5 years, how they're going to be developing in these countries and expanding, and factor those questions in. Last but not least, I know that we have a presentation today on due diligence, on credit due diligence, but one thing I would very, very much recommend, when you're doing your due diligence, one of the biggest issues that we're beginning to see is enforcement action by regulators. Compliance is not a regulatory tick-the-box process. I've been in compliance. I trained as a lawyer at the European Central Bank, worked in JP Morgan in product development, then went into compliance. I really needed to understand my product. I needed to understand how compliance can be operationally effective and efficient and doesn't bleed dry organizations in terms of cost, because unfortunately that can happen. So when you're doing your due diligence, when you're asking about regulatory compliance, don't just look for policies and procedures. Look at operational costs of compliance. Look at staffing numbers. Ask. Let me see an audit report. I want it, it really depends on how much money you're investing as to which audit reports you will get. But ask those questions. Ask them, what is your transaction monitoring backlog? What is your KYC backlog? How are you clearing this? What has your audit report shown? What was your last regulatory inspection? Have any issues been raised there? How have you remediated it? And also as well, with your connectivity partners, with the rails that you're using for banking, have you been required to provide any evidence of clearance of days clearance of transaction monitoring alerts, KYC? This is all so important. So from my perspective, I would say when doing due diligence, don't just ask questions in respect of, are you compliant from a regulatory perspective? Dig a bit deeper, get the audit reports, ask questions, and pull those thread on the jumper. Any questions? I was looking at some people falling asleep.
You want to go to your room, shower, go for a sauna, get a massage? Yeah. Yes. So that means we have to start. That means we have to start. I want to make sure that we have some time to rest. I know some of you are working through jet lag. Some of you are working through your late nights and too much indulgence last night. And some of us want to indulge later on, so we have to be prepared. So we're going to start a very surprise, short conversation with Lily D'Angelo. Lily spent 3 months trying to get out of China, to go to Chicago, to come to New York, to make it to Lisbon here with us. She's been part of our board for a long time now, and she governs us with several other board members. So without prompting, I'm going to let Lily start this conversation in the afternoon and candidly talk about your experiences, perhaps with other boards, and talk about your experiences that you've had with Link2. Thank you.
Thank you, Kareem, and thank you for the entire Link2 team and the local team to make this wonderful event happen in this beautiful Hashkai, right? Did I pronounce it right? Good afternoon. My name is Lily D'Angelo. I am investor, customer, and also on the board of directors with Link2. And the way I connected to Link2 is through a Karetsu forum. I was a member of a Midwestern chapter, and I got to know Bill, and I invested on the platform of Link2, also Link2 itself. And when Bill asked me to become a board member, I said yes without any hesitation. And so far, we're really enjoying the journey, see how Link2 take off from almost zero revenue.
Zero.
Now to, yeah, well, it was close to zero, to today's almost 100 million, right? Or it's not right. Well, we're getting there. If not 100 million, we're getting there. So on behalf of the entire board of directors, I want to welcome here, and hopefully you're enjoying the platform, the conference, and meet with each other. I've met some wonderful Link2 customers so far, so I look forward to meeting more of you. And my personal experience with Link2 has been fantastic so far. So I'm sure you have the same experience. So without further ado, I'll turn back the platform to Kareem. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. Actually, wait. You're allowed to ask her questions. How's Link2 doing? Should I be an investor? Should I invest more? Come on, with a couple of questions.
Yes, question.
I prompted you with the questions.
How is Link2 doing?
The question was, how is Link2 doing? So I would say Link2 is on the right track, and we're looking for all options for the future. We do have a strategic committee, and we also have Matthew on the advisory board. I thought Matthew was just in front of me. No?
Yeah.
Oh, you just, yeah. Well, also we have a very large advisory board help the company to really look for paths for the future. So I think Link2 is on the right track, for me personally. Yes, sir.
I've been propagating Link2 to quite a few of my friends and potential fellow investors. But at the current juncture, what do you think, if you were to pitch to a new investor in Link2, what would you say?
Well, I would say, I would use my personal experience. Link2 for private investment is really a way to diverse your total portfolio. That's how I see it. Of course, we can all purchase public company in NASDAQ or Wall Street, right? But I think private investment for smaller investors, Link2 is the only way to go. Matthew probably can tell you a better story. He's been with Link2 much longer. Matthew, you want to say a few words?
We're studying for another.
He has a platform. All right, okay. But thank you.
All right.
Yes, well, there's one more.
I get asked a lot about non-accredited investors. What's Link2 doing to essentially support them now or in the future?
What was the question? Unaccredited investors.
The question is where Link2 is going for the future?
For supporting non-accredited investors?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So the question is, what Link2 is doing to support non-credited investors? Well, right now the platform only allowed credited investor to invest, right? And that's by law, SEC law. So we can't change that. But what we're hoping is the SEC change the rule. So that's, and the door is start crack open. So we're hoping in the near future the non-accredited investor will be able to invest on the platform, but not right now. It's because we can't break the law, right? So hopefully, the private investment, they were talking about to protect consumers. That's the reason. But if you look at the private market versus public market, the risk factor is actually quite similar. So in my opinion, it's a very good way to expand your portfolio, right? In a good way. I mean, the risk factor, there's a risk in the public market, right? So yeah, it's, we'll see. Hopefully it will happen soon. Anyone else? Thank you all for coming and enjoy your day.
Thank you, Lily. The next speaker is what I want to be able to do. The title, we're moving straight into golden, or Oongh, and the topic title is how the crypto world, crypto environment allowed me to engage in the great resignation. So we all want to resign. So Golden, come up and tell us how to do it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I'm definitely excited to be here and humbled at the same time. Similar to Linda, lived on a farm, except for my dad was a basketball coach and they had a pasture with a house in it. And so we found cheap rent in Barnesville, Georgia. That's a real place. Barnesville, Georgia. So it was, we were poor, which is below poor. You have poor, and then you have poor down by the sewer. That's where we were. We were when we moved in, all the rats lost weight. It was crazy. We had to sit by, open the oven to feel the heat. There was 5 of us, 5 kids, and so we had a big family. Toilet water would freeze, and but those are I was reading one of Andrew Carnegie books. I believe he said, "Poverty is the richest experience a boy can have, but it's meant to be passed through and not dwelled in." Oh, I'm sorry. And I believe, and that's part of one of the draws for me to link to was being able to democratize some of these pre-IPO offerings that haven't always been available to everybody, and lowering that entry point. I mean, I was barely scraping in when Joe called. I remember where I was, but when Joe called so I wanted to invest in Ripple. But just going back, so my dad was a basketball coach. He brought us up, chase your passion, not your pension. And so that's what I did. I played basketball as long as I could. I played for, after college. Actually, now looking back, I actually had a full-ride scholarship to Boston University and Lehigh University, but I thought I was going to the NBA, so I signed with Western Kentucky and didn't quite make it to the NBA. So, but I did play in Mexico for a little bit. Los Bucaneros de Campeche in the Yucatan Peninsula, but they quickly fired me. You're only allowed like 2 Americans, so not like, and I was not that height matters. My dad told me when I was young, son, he's only 5'9", my mom's 5'5", he said, I'm sorry you're 5'9", but if you were 6'5", I'd have to slap your mother. And so, every time I was like, I wish I would be taller, it was like the shock factor, like, no, I wouldn't want my dad to slap my mom, so I'm so happy just to be 5'9", thank you. When we were little, we used to do halftime shows. That's really all my dad had. His dad was an abusive alcoholic, and he was actually his dad beat him to quit school. But he had a dream, and he loved basketball, and that was his ticket to get out, and he believed that a father's responsibility is to teach his kids what he knows. And so he knew basketball, and that's what he taught us. So when I was 3 years old, I could dribble 3 basketballs at the same time, the length of the basketball court, down and back. And we actually still have home video footage. My dad had a friend who had a camera at the time. This is in the 80s, but he gave us the footage. Like Charles Barkley, I know some of you seen on TNT, he's in the huddle. That was back when he played. We're in the Oongh in Atlanta, dribbling basketballs, and Ernie Johnson, who does TNT with him, he's rebounding for us. So we have some of those videos that will last forever. So, man. So after, okay, so I was in training camp. So after I got fired in Mexico, we did a stint in China. We played all their top teams. I was at it was called Premier Basketball League, and we're getting close to the crisis now, like 06, 07. And I was playing in Jacksonville. Did you see the chalk on my lips? Thank you. So I was in training camp in Jacksonville, playing with the Jacksonville Jam. It was a new league. And the guy went to make a pass, and I tried to block the pass, and his knuckles hit me in the bottom tooth here, and it blew both of my teeth through the gums. And so, like, you can see the line where they just blew, and they were spinning, and they're longer than they look. And so, what I found out is that for some reason, people don't trust you when you're missing your front teeth. Like, I'd be in Walmart, like, smile at people, and everybody's ducking. They're looking at my tonsils. So that was a long time. Like, so basically, he said, chase your passion, not your pension. I did, and I went slap broke. I was like, back down to boo work. So I had to get a job, and that was in 08, 09, right in the housing crisis. I mean, it's a tough time just to get a job. And I went and worked for a company that manufactured point of purchase fixtures and displays. It was like commercial printing. We had 1 million square feet, probably at the heyday, 1,000 employees. And so I started there estimating customer service, and then went to inside sales, then outside sales, and then after 5 years of work, I was still making $30,000 for the whole year. I know we're living with rich people in here. And so I went to work for another company, and then as contemporary marketing. And then I got a call about a year later. They wanted me to come back to this other company. And so I went back there, and they asked me to be a general manager. And before I went back, my friend gave me some good advice. He said, "Go." He said, "My friends are consultants. They make all kinds of money." He said, "All they do is they go to the people that are doing the work, and they listen to them. And they put in a beautiful presentation, and they present it to the executives, and they make all kinds of money." And I'm like, genius. So I went, and I spent a lot of time on the plant floor. And sure enough, the first plant manager, he said, Eduardo Sanchez, he said, "Gold, no offense." He said, "But I've been here 25 years, and we've had 17 managers, and you're probably going to be 18. He said, "Everybody comes, and they have these new ideas." And he said, "For all these new ideas, we take 3 steps back." He said, "If you will just untie my hands and let me go to work," he said, "I can get the job done." And so I said, "Here's my new idea. No new ideas. You do whatever you want, and I got your back." And so we had a lot of success that year in that division. Probably the best they've had in 20 plus years that anything I had P&Ls for. And so from there I went to another division. That's why I kind of don't like the title of my talk here today, but I was trying to be fancy. I'm not a marketing person, so I thought, man, that'd be cool. But because I really care about those people that we worked with, some of the best people I know. And so I went to the other division and did similar thing, and we had a great year. But then, probably, it was 2017. I was actually just going to buy some supplements online, all legal supplements online. I said, you can save 20% if you pay in Bitcoin. So I thought, well, I'll try anything once except for homosexual activity and drugs with needles. Not that there's anything wrong with either. It was not part of my philosophy. So I tried. So I tried to buy the Bitcoin, And it took too long. I think the fee I was gonna take like 5 days, so I'm like, I don't have time for that, I'll just pay for it. Maybe this will be one of those things that turns into something. And then 3 months later, I went back and looked at it, and it had hit like triple. This was 2017. And so once that happened, I thought, wow, I don't know what this is. I don't really know that many rich people, but I went to the one that I did know and respected, and I said, hey Chip, do you know anything about this Bitcoin? And he said, I don't. And I thought, wow, this is why I like him. That's one thing I found out. Side note, beware of false knowledge, for it is more dangerous than ignorance. And I've seen a lot of people in a lot of high places that don't know but bark like they know, and it gets us in a lot of trouble. I'd rather just someone say, I don't know, but I'll find out. So anyway, that's why I go to Chip. It takes a while. He comes back and he says, no, he said, I don't know if it's going to be Bitcoin. He said, but this blockchain underlying technology, he said, I think there's another one called Ripples or XRP. And he said, I think Ethereum will be like the oil. And so from that time, on the evenings, I just started studying a lot and just researching all the different tokens. He also bought a mining rig and taught me how to set up. I got $6,000. I still got the receipts for the Ethereum rig. And we started mining Ethereum out of the house. And then shortly thereafter, I started realizing with the price fluctuation, I'd probably make more if I was just investing in some of these things. And so that's what I started doing in the research. Just reading anything I could get my hands on, banking on Bitcoin, and then studying the Ripple and the team and all of that, and listening to all the YouTube guys, and really learning how to learn is what I'm reading white papers. I'm like, I don't know what a white paper is. I'm like, tissue paper. So I was reading it. I'm like, what am I looking at? And I remember the story. This hopefully is not too inappropriate, but we're all adults. So like, my dad's telling the story. I think it's funny to me because I was about his age when he's telling the story. So he said when he was like 30 something, in his mid-30s, he said my brother, he got kicked in his private parts when he was about 12, 13, so about the puberty age. And he said, my brother came home and said, Dad, I got kicked. And he said, well, you look at it. And my dad telling the story, he said, man, he's just about that age where you don't want to really be caught looking at your son, you know, but you can look, I just want to check, make sure nothing was ruptured in the posterity here. And he said, so I pulled his underwear down. And he said, I was nervous, so I went, well, looks good to me. And when he let go, it went pop and hit it. And so that's a long way to say, the only way I could relate to that was looking at those white papers. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but I think it's okay. So I was trying to figure out. I was trying to figure out like what was going on, if there was a use case for any of this stuff. And that was the best I could find. So I did start investing in Ripple pretty good in the XRP token, and I felt pretty confident in the wealth that was being generated. Yeah. So I remember too. This was in the 2020 crisis. I remember when President Trump was in the White House and he had all the bankers, JP Morgan, Bank of America, and I remember saying like, it's not a financial crisis, and I'm like, I think it's a financial crisis. I'm not sure indirectly, directly or what. And so at that time I was able to roll over into I Trust Capital. A lot of the same YouTube guys use those into a retirement account. Then 2020, some guys bought into our company, and they came in, and we didn't really agree much. And so probably October, me and my wife actually had a stillborn in 2020, which was tough. And then less than 90 days later, my dad got COVID, and so he passed away. And so at the funeral, and I'm a mama's boy, so I was born on May 10th, 1981. $5 in a card is never too late. I'll go ahead and send it to me. But So I'm Mama's boy, born on Mother's Day. So I told her at the funeral I'd move back to Utah. And so and it was really a tough decision because I loved all the people that I was working with. But I'm glad that because of crypto and those investments, that I was able to do that. And I wasn't like balling, I'm more like Social Security, but I could find a way to make it. I might have to get a paper route or do something different. I guess I don't do paper routes anymore, but then that's when I moved to Utah, and I met up with some friends. So we were the little nuggets that did the halftime show, and I had some friends that played, and they were the Whiz Kids. And so these Whiz Kids, we had kind of lost contact since my father passed away. We had rekindled the flame, and I told them I was just going to take just a couple years off and just invest in myself. And I remember being at my in-laws table, and I was telling them my goal is if I can make, because I knew I was getting ready for the Flair Network job anyway, so I'm like, their passive income is going to be the thing. How can if I could apply myself passive income? So I told my in-laws at the table, the same ones I told about Bitcoin at 15,000 before it went down to 3,000 for 3 years, Sunday dinner. So I totally lost my train of thought. What was it? Yeah, so but they had just started a Genesis Block. It was a startup company, and it was very similar in principle to what's happening here in Lisbon. It was trying to bridge the gap and be able to provide DeFi for the average person. And so it was an app that's built to be able to spin the crypto, and they've been working on it for 2 years. But I started in less than a year, it would be a year June, and they started doing private banking. So we don't have time to wait, and so the private banking, it took off. I've never really seen anything like it. Now looking back, I realized my friend was just wanting to go fishing in Alaska. I needed someone to do all the paperwork. So I got stuck in my basement working a ton. But we onboarded, it ended up being over $120 million in probably 9 months, 8 to 9 months. And it was pretty wild. But now with the regulatory environment that we're in, and with the BlockFi settlement for $100 million, the company now, as of actually today's my first day in the new company, so I'm on the clock, but I kind of feel bad not being at work. So they've decided to split. So me and one of the co-founders, we've started a fund just to have somewhere for the funds to go, and then the Genesis Block rebranded to High Top, so they're still building the app. But yeah, that's pretty much my journey here, and I'm just happy. My dad always said, anytime you can be around good people, do it. So that's why I'm here. It's to be around and be around y'all. So thanks for having me.
So fascinating story. Thank you for sharing that, Gordon. That was wonderful. I think the learning experience is perspective, right? Where are you? Where are you on this plane? What is your perspective? And that's an important thing to pay attention to. I mean, I can't articulate more. You'll spend time with Golden, he'll tell you more stories, but it's all about making decisions that are relevant to you and your family. Health, family comes first. Once you take care of that, you can follow on other things, right? Without so much of a worry. So, Golden, thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate you. Applaud you. All right, who wants to contribute ad hoc to this conversation here? Who wants to put your hands up? Anyone want to make a contribution? Otherwise, we're going to the last panel, and then we'll be out of here. Roy?
Yes.
You're up, sir.
Presentation.
You'll have to do it as summarized like John Murray did, Dr. Murray. It's like there is no PowerPoint slide.
It's okay, I use it as a frame of reference, right? And I'll be brief, right?
And Roy's going to use several acronyms that I have no knowledge what they mean, so please just help us understand what that means.
Try not to, as much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. The topic that I'm discussing is passive income leveraging NAS or DAS, which is Nodes as a Service and DeFi as a Service. Roy Solorzano. A little bit of background. My background is in IT and IT finance. I started in the consulting world, so I did make those pretty slide decks, and the company I worked for got paid a ton of money for it. So I did some management consulting and IT specific for a good portion of my background, and then IT finance for the rest for a global bank. Closer, sure. So how did I get involved in sort of the digital asset space? I think it was around 2017. My brother, who's here, gave me a call and he said, "Hey brother, why don't we invest in Bitcoin?" And if you have ever worked in a large bank, you usually are very busy, and I was busy trying to accomplish things. And I said, sure, I'll look into it. Reality is I was just way too busy, and in my mind I said, I'm just too busy. I'm not going to do it. Right? I didn't actually go back to my brother. It was that, right? And so, if you look back at what Bitcoin did in the last, 4 or 5 years, yeah, of course I should have looked into it. So when my brother reached out again about a year and a half ago, and he said, "Hey, I got a buddy of mine who's investing in Ripple and XRP. Want to take a look at that real quick?" I thought, yeah, maybe this time I should actually look into it, right? So I did look into it, did my own research, and I thought it had some legs, right? I got some background in IT, enough background in the banking world, just being around it for so long, and I understood the value proposition or the target market that Ripple was trying to fix, which is cross-border payments. I knew it was extremely expensive to do that, and I said, yeah, the business value makes sense. So obviously, I looked up where I could potentially pick up some private equity. That's how I found Link2, and then I obviously picked up some of the tokens as well. So that's how I got to get involved in Link2 as an investor, and then eventually into the digital asset space or the crypto space, and then looking into something like passive income, specifically for the topics that I'm discussing. So again, the domain is passive income, and essentially what passive income is you're just getting some type of income routinely for not actively being part of that organization or that entity, right? Full disclosure, that the risks are very high in that space. It's really, really new, probably a year and a half old-ish, and I'm going to be discussing some of my experiences in it, discussing a couple of projects that I'm invested in, but by no means am I'm endorsing them or I'm asking you to invest, and certainly it's just me sharing my experience, right? And certainly, you're here this whole time, please do your own research, right? So what's the opportunity? What are the opportunities? The opportunity is basically you can invest a very little amount, or relatively little amount, into a startup, if you will, right? Usually around the digital asset space, but it doesn't have to be. And essentially, you're investing in something new, and the growth potential is high. Right? On top of that, there's a unique characteristic about this space that they figured out a way to offer some type of liquidity. So you make an investment, then you can actually get some of your return on it, or return on that initial investment relatively quickly, which is interesting, right? Okay, I can invest, there's an opportunity for me to get my money back and continue to invest. So that caught my attention. The domain again was Nodes as a Service, DeFi as a Service. I think someone mentioned DeFi, so it just means, DeFi just means you don't have that middleman like a broker, stockbroker, or advisor advising you, but at the same time, he's not charging you a fee, right? So you're taking that middleman out. So as a service, let me just quickly define it. I think the term came around more in the IT world, but I mean, if you think about it, I think a lot of us already participate in the as a service model, right? Your phone, your mobile phone, right, is as a service. You're paying a fee monthly, and the companies are giving you the phone service. So that's what essentially it's an example as a service. So is the cable companies and the famous AWS, right? You have infrastructure, you pay a monthly fee, and you get that service. So that's what as a service means. Nodes as a service, or DeFi as a service is usually tied to some of the digital asset space. Right? Make sense? Okay. I won't go, I have these elaborate details on what Nodes as a service is, but I'll let those go. It's essentially investing in the infrastructure of the blockchain world. Right? The first project that I'm going to discuss is the first real NAS project, or Nodes as a Service project. It's Strongblock, and essentially they're the first, right? So essentially, what in Q4 2020, they came up with a flash or white paper, right, just describing what they were offering. Essentially, it was crowdsourcing some money. And the idea was to invest in further decentralizing the network, specifically around Ethereum. And the idea was, hey, we're going to crowdsource some money. We're going to invest in the Ethereum ecosystem, and then we're going to, take some of the profits and share it with our community. Pretty basic. For our investors, the level of effort is minimal, really small amount of effort, but the rewards could be interesting. They created some digital token called Strong to represent their platform, and they came up with this idea of, okay, it's just a logical model. If you take 10 tokens and you unite them together, it creates a logical construct to invest in us, and then we'll offer you, in return, we'll offer you a fraction of our token back, and it accumulates, right? So you invest in us, and we give something in return at necessarily real time, right? Okay, makes sense, interesting. The token is a fluctuating value, so it's a little bit hard to determine, okay, what is it today? What is it tomorrow? And so when you're looking at these opportunities, usually the first question is when can I get my money back, right? You're investing in something. How fast can I get my money out? And then, can I continue to invest, right? Usually some of the questions, right? And so in my slides, I sort of laid out the math. It says, okay, if you invest here, this is how long it takes, yada, yada, yada. But we won't go into those details. I'll share the slides. I also, in my slides, I have the price graph. Since the Strongblock project's been around for 14, 15 months, you get to see how the price per token fluctuated over time. And there's some interesting indicators, but again, you guys can look at it on your own. You can infer some of the things, where the opportunities were and where they weren't. Obviously, when you're dealing with it in real time, it's a little bit more difficult to sort of figure out where do I make a profit or not. But the idea is, just to recap, you make an investment and they produce a fraction of their token in return, and it accumulates daily or real time, and it has a certain value. So you, as the investor, get to choose, do I sell it every day? Or do I let it grow and further compound it? So that is the opportunity for you, that's the decision for you. And depending if you think it's going to grow over time, you might choose to compound, or you might choose to take your money out, right? So just depending. There's pros and cons to each. In the slide deck, what I thought I would do was, because we could look at it, historically, I laid out, 3 options, and I think there probably or 3. What I say, the art of the possible, right? Number 1 is okay, I made an investment here, great. What if I just sold every day or every month? Sorry, at the end of every month, what would happen, right? And so I did some numbers, and essentially, if you bought something in January of 2021, We invested about 3.3K. At the end of the year, or the end of the year, it went up 33x, right, roughly. That's substantial, right? So we made roughly a $3,000 investment, and if you just at the end of the month, these are approximate numbers, of course, you pull out over 100K. And I know in the digital asset space, there were some folks that made an investment a lot more than 3K. Some were 30K, some were 100K. And you do the math, they did really well. Really well. Okay, great. You can figure out that some people would do that. Okay, what's my next question? What if this is a more conservative approach, right? What if you invested in 3K and you focused on getting that 3K back? And then you sold. Given the token price, it was still close to 30K, right? I mean 30x. So the first one was 33x, this one was 30x. Still did very well, right? And the last one was, the question I had, or what I wanted to share was, what if you chose to compound? If you know compounding, you already know what the answer is, right? Or what happened. In this example, I'll share the slides. In this example, the investor decided to compound, for 4 months. And yeah, the math was, close to 250K off that 3K investment. It's very interesting. The last question that I posed here, or just did the math, was well, okay, what if you took the same sort of approach and you made an investment in January 2022? Well, this one was fundamentally different. If you looked at the graph, you would know. This one you were roughly down, and again, you're not looking at the entire year of 2022, right? Because here we are. It was similar investment. And where would it stand today, right? And this one, the return wasn't nearly as good. It was less than half your initial investment. But if you look at the graph, you'll see that the token price, right? The token price went down dramatically this year. And so I thought about, okay, well, what fundamentally happened? Besides some of the stuff I think everybody knows here, which means the macro environment, right? Macro econ, the geopolitical, that affected everything. Okay, what else? The project decided to pivot on their business model, which led to some overall project sentiment. And in these opportunities, think about it again, right? You make an investment, it starts to generate a token percent for you daily, and as an investor, you have two options. You reinvest the gains, or you sell it. And so if you sell, it's just simply supply and demand, right? If you choose to sell, you're contributing to the selling factor, and it slightly goes down, right? Unless there's some other groups on the other end and start buying more. So if you sell more than you buy, then obviously the token price goes down. And so if you think about it, if folks are losing a bit of faith, or for whatever reason, they'll probably sell more, right? And it doesn't have to be necessarily your own project, but in this case it could be, and it could be other things, right? So the project decided to pivot in their business model, and so I think that contributed to basically the decline. The other thing is the emissions. What is the emissions? It's synonymous with, okay, you made an investment, it's giving you a specific return. You can use something as basic as 1/4, right? 0.25, right? But as more and more people make an investment, that grows. And so when I looked at, people, at the numbers, people making an investment, I noticed the more people were making investment, they call it a node, right? A lot of people realized that the emissions, when you look at it, it's growing. It's not growing linearly, right? It's growing, look more geometrically, right? What does that mean? It means linear would be, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Geometric would be something similar to 1 times 2 times 3, etc., etc. So you understand that the growth is just growing a lot faster. And so you could almost say that this specific project, because of their success, the amount of money that they had to pay out was growing geometrically. So imagine that, and that's basically emissions, right? So what you're producing. And so when I looked at it, I said, wow, this, it grew fast, it grew a lot, and so did the payout. And so fundamentally, as an investor, you look at something and you say, hey, can this project sustain the amount of money or emissions that they're paying out? Fundamentally, right? And that helps you make a decision. And then the last one, contributing factor was certainly the Black Swan Terra Luna event, right? It just makes sense. Essentially, there was something that happened in the crypto digital world that scared everyone, and certainly that caused some decline too. So, long story short, this project seems like very successful. Still potentially be successful, but they're doing a fundamental project or business model pivot. There's another project I wanted to discuss, which is a bit different, and this is the Phoenix Community Capital, another interesting project in that space. Again, fundamentally, it is passive income, right? This one's fundamentally different because this was relatively new, but their business model is a little different, right? They're saying, okay, same principle, right? You make an investment, we'll provide you a certain fraction back every day. Their business. So the question is, well, how do they generate money, right? That's what I mean by business model. Their business model is the unique part that I thought was interesting was they're investing in incubation projects, right? What does that mean? It means that they're creating different business models, if you will, or different businesses around what they say on-chain or off-chain, means in the crypto digital asset space and just traditional businesses. But they're applying sort of this as-a-service investment vehicle to their investors and community. Again, crowdsource, make an investment, and they give you a portion of their token back every single day. And the liquidity part is, which makes it interesting, is you can choose to sell it. And so every day, or every month, or every week, you can sell it and recoup your money back, or make profit, or however you seem fit. Is how often do you want to pull a portion of that money out, right? So passive income. So I thought this project was unique, and certainly, obviously, I made an investment, and so the other thing they're doing is that I thought was unique was they have different rounds of investment, if you will, but they also have this concept of profit sharing, right? So not only are they for a specified portion of time is offering that, okay, we give you a percentage back of our token for you to either recoup your money or sell or compound, but we're going to offer profit sharing as well. That was unique to me, and I said, that's unique, okay. So certainly something to consider. In my slide deck, I have a list of their known incubation projects. We won't cover them. You guys can look at it in the slide deck. But I did look at it under the same lens as the first project, and I said, okay, let's have a look. If I made an investment in, and they're new, so it was this year that it came out, January 2022. Okay, if I made an investment and I sold at the end of every month, put about 14K investment in January, and I sold every month, what would it produce? In this case, it was about 2.5x. Interesting. Right? Next question. If I made an investment and I focused on getting my initial money back, what it would have produced? In this case, it was close to 2x, but a little bit below, so 1.9 or something like that. Still interesting, right? Because you make an investment. In this case, you pull some money out, but you still own the assets, right? It's still producing something every day. And in this case, they could potentially share that profit sharing ongoing, right? Rather interesting. And the last one was if I made an investment in January and I compounded for 3 months, and this one was low, right? So this was you didn't get your money back. When I shared the slides, you'd understand similar scenario where the token price declined. And if you look at it under the microscope, you had similar sort of contributing factors, right? Look, fundamentally, 2022 is just different than 2022 and 21, right? So the macro econ is different, the geopolitical is different, the crypto volatility is different, yada, yada, yada. But the other thing is, okay, well, what about the project sentiment? And what about emissions? Right? And so when I looked at this one under the microscope, they had a bit of a higher payout. So the emissions was high and it was growing, at a faster rate. It seems like they've figured out a way to cap that. They've reduced emissions for the folks that they're offering for that round of profit sharing, which when I looked under the microscope, right, that's essentially really reduced the emissions. What is emissions again? It just means the payout that they're giving out, right? So okay, different. When I thought about overall project sentiment, I thought, okay, maybe if they focused on so when you think of token decline, right, or the price declining, goes back to what I said before. The people that invest have a choice. Do they compound, continue to invest, or do they sell? There's a variety of reasons why you would sell or compound, but some of the basic ones is that you still believe where the sentiment is high, and so you continue to compound. But if the sentiment's low for whatever reason, then you sell. And so that's a contributing factor. And that's the one, obviously, that's not included in the macro econ, geopolitical, yada, yada. It's one you can somewhat try to manage. So I thought to myself, okay, what could they do better? Well, maybe they can incentivize or communicate or market their, some of the things so that they would incentivize either net new money or compounding, right? So that reduces the pressure on them. So I thought, okay, I could certainly do it. But then I thought about what they were doing, and every time, so I'm an investor, so they allow some communication back and forth. And then, and the response was that they're really focusing on delivering. What does that mean, delivering, right? I thought about what they're trying to do, this part specifically. I mean, if they're creating incubators, essentially new companies, they're not just managing their own company. They're not just growing their marketing department, their finance department, their legal department. This company's 5 months old, etc. Right? Create a company. They're incubating other projects that have to grow their client base, have to grow their management team, their legal department, yada yada yada. And this is like if you look at some of their incubators, like 5 or 6 different incubators they've announced, right? And I'm sure they have more. But you can understand that why they're so busy, if you will. You can start, if you peel back the onion, you realize, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, 2 more minutes, okay. So, closing thoughts for me. Certainly there's opportunity there, right? But just like anything else, it's really, really new. You saw some of the figures that I noticed. Some of them were really opportunistic. And so some of the things that I would say is when you're looking at, if you're ever looking at things like this, think about what are you trying to get out of it, right? Is it a short-term investment? Is it a long-term, or both? When you're looking at things like that, I think investing early matters. You're gonna realize that some of these are just general principles and that you apply them elsewhere. Get your initial investment back, and there's opportunity to get your initial investment back, right? Don't forget to take profits along the way, right? If you start routinely selling some, you sort of hedge the situation that happened with the Terra Luna's Black Swan event, right? Now, another obvious one. This was so obvious, but I think when you're in the investment vehicle, if you will, like you're the investor, emotions get in the way. Buy low, sell high. It sounds so simple, right? It really sounds so simple, but I think when you're investing, if you haven't invested in a long time, your mindset is a bit counterproductive, right? You think it went low, I should be selling, right? No, it's actually the opposite. You should be buying, and vice versa. And the last one is compounding is powerful. Everybody knows that, but in both ways. If you compound in the right time, it can make an enormous difference. But if you compound in the wrong time, it can make an enormous difference on the reverse side. So
thank you. Thank you, so that made a lot of sense to a lot of you. It made a little bit less sense to some of us. But Roy is here, so tap him for his knowledge and see where you can get with that, because it's a very interesting concept. But putting things into perspective, it is ask the questions. Ask the questions why you do things, why you make investments, and what is the outcome that you're intending to have from those choices, but ask the questions, right? Once you understand what you want, and you're asking the right questions over and over and over again, you choose your direction, and then you take a little bit of the emotion out of it and stick to the fundamentals and financials that are important to you as individual investors. But again, set your parameters and stick by them. So anyways, thank you everyone for being here today. It was wonderful to have you. The knowledge that you shared was excellent. Two things. It's 5:30 to 6:30. I think we're meeting in the lobby for headshots. Remember the 60-second questions that we will be asking you. The headshots will be happening every day. If you get it out of the way early, you don't have to worry about it. If you take your time, we'll hunt you down. The bus will leave at 7:45 for dinner. 7:45. If you miss that bus, you're taking an Uber. So you can decide whatever you want to do. We would like to, the hosts here at this pavilion have allowed us to stay a little bit longer, so there's more desserts, some bitings. I think there's some wine, so enjoy that for however long you want for the next 20 minutes. However long for the next 20 minutes. Enjoy that. And then we want to a round of applause for the team that supported us and the chef. The chef and the team was amazing. Shane, thank you. Dee, thank you so much. They will be with us for the entire part of the trip. They will be taking photos. If there are some things that you want to send home to your family, like sitting here in front of the stage with friends that you've made, please ask Shane to take a photo of you, or in front of the lake, or in front of the golf course. Shane, did I throw you guys under the bus? No. Well, whoever wants, just call out to Shane and Dee. And if you want a group photo, just let me know before you leave, and we'll do a group photo. But there'll be plenty of opportunities. So relax, enjoy. Thank you very much, and we will see you now, later, and definitely at 7:45 if you're joining us for dinner. None of these things are mandatory. We have reserved the tables. It's a wonderful place. We'll have a great time, so if you can't come, that'd be great. If you don't come, we'll send you the bill. But thank you very much. Thanks.